Part 3. Money, 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 money. Be your own best financial advisor. Many people go out and hire financial advisors, but I have also seen a lot of those advisors destroy people. Athletes in particular make a great deal of money at a very young age. Too often, some manager squanders the athlete's fortune, and they wind up in their 30s with nothing left but their past glory, and are forced to get jobs just to survive. A good friend of mine and truly one of the greatest basketball players who has ever lived, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, was in the NBA for over 20 years, only to find that some bad advice had destroyed much of his wealth. I don't know whether it was theft or stupidity, but it was a shame. Herschel Walker is an athlete who signed big contracts with both the USFL and NFL. One day he came to me and told me he was going to invest in a fast food franchise. I told him, "Herschel, you're a friend of mine, but if you do that, I will not speak to you again." Because of the relationship we had, and continue to have, he decided not to make the investment. The company went bankrupt 2 years later. Herschel is now a wealthy man, and he thanks me every time I see him. When it comes to picking a financial advisor, rely on your own judgment based on what you read in reliable publications like the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Business Week, and Fortune. They are usually terrific, even though, on occasion, they say some negative things about me. I'm angry at Fortune at the moment, and for good reason. But even Fortune sometimes manages to awake from its stupor to report something worthwhile. I'm particularly impressed with an editor there named Jeffrey Colvin, who is also the host of Wall Street Week on PBS and has written perceptively about corporate restructuring. The New York Post has developed a truly great business section, and one that is fun to read. Lately, the New York Times coverage of business has gone right to the top. If you read these financial publications for a while, you will start to pick up on the cadence and get a feel for what's happening in the market, which funds are the best, and who the best advisors are. Stay with the winners. Often you will read about somebody who has made money quickly and then relies on one of his friends to invest his fortune. That friend has no track record, and if it weren't for his connection to a rich investor, he wouldn't have any money. Beware of instant stars in the world of finance. Trust the people who do it again and again, and who are consistently ranked high by the 4 best institutional business media outlets. But trust your own common sense first. Invest simply. There are numerous firms that provide comprehensive charts and other information on the best returns from certain financial advisors and funds. Study those charts, not over the short term, maybe they just got lucky, but over a 15 or 20-year period. Invest with the help of a major firm like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Bear Stearns, or Merrill Lynch. These are your hard-earned savings at stake. Don't take unnecessary risks. Generally, there is a reason for success. When you look at legends like Alan Ace Greenberg and Warren Buffett and marvel at how good they are, you will likely see that what makes them so successful is the same quality you should apply to every one of your own investments: common sense. I've read many of Warren Buffett's annual reports. In every case, what fascinates me is that he's able to reduce things to the simplest of terms. Many accomplished Wall Street gurus can make you dizzy with talk of intricate financial maneuverings. They might impress you with their sophisticated computerized trading results, their 50% returns from options on products that may not even exist yet. Fortunes are won and lost every day in these markets. But as far as I'm concerned, those folks would be just as successful if they ditched their hedge funds and put all their money on their favorite roulette number at the Trump Taj Mahal Casino in Atlantic City. You paid good money for this audiobook, and I know you're expecting sophisticated investment advice. The wisest thing I can tell you is to invest only in products you understand, with people you know you can trust. Sometimes the best investments are the ones you don't make. Get a prenuptial agreement. I've said it before. I even wrote a chapter on the art of the prenup in one of my other books, but I'll say it again for anyone about to propose. A prenuptial agreement doesn't mean that you won't always love your spouse. It doesn't mean that you have doubts about the person's integrity or questions about the relationship. All it means is that you recognize that life, especially the parts involving love and business, can be complicated. People have a right to protect their assets. If you own your own business and you're facing a difficult divorce without having secured a prenuptial agreement, your negligence could jeopardize the livelihoods of your employees. I know plenty of women who are supporting their husbands, and this advice applies equally to both sexes. If I hadn't signed a prenup, I would be writing this book from the perspective of somebody who lost big. We needed a bus to get Ivana's lawyers to court. It was a disaster. But I had a solid prenup, and it held up. A friend of mine is married to a woman who stands only 5'2", but he's petrified of what she will do to him in court, all because he didn't get a prenup. Before he met this woman, he'd had 4 unsuccessful marriages, yet he told me, "Donald, I'm so in love with this woman that I don't need a prenuptial agreement." I didn't have the courage to tell him what I was thinking to myself. Loser. A year later, the marriage was over, and he was going through hell. When I saw him, he looked like a frightened puppy. There's nothing wrong with common sense. Be like Thoreau and simplify. Cut out the middleman. Wayne Newton is a great friend of mine, and he made a lot of money over the years. Unfortunately, given terrible advice, he lost his money and was forced to declare bankruptcy. Meanwhile, his lawyers were eating him alive. He called me and said, "Donald, I heard you owed $9.2 billion to 100 banks in the early 90s, and you never went bankrupt. How did you do it? Because I just can't seem to get out of this mess. My lawyers are making a fortune, and the banks are impossible." I asked Wayne how many banks were involved. He told me it was 3. "You're lucky," I said. "I had 99 banks, and I made a point of becoming best friends with everybody at every bank. You have to do the same." I gave him some more advice, which he has generously acknowledged in many interviews. I told him, "Wayne, you are a major celebrity. Have your secretary call the 3 banks and get the person who is really in charge, not the figurehead, and personally talk to all 3 people. Arrange a meeting with them, ideally a dinner with them and their families. Get to know them. At the end of this period of time, they'll like you. They'll be impressed by you because you're a celebrity. They may control a lot of money, but they don't control fame. And people are impressed by fame. Forget your lawyers. They're never going to want to settle the case because then their legal fees stop. You must do it yourself. Call the bankers, become friendly with the bankers, and make a deal." Wayne called me 3 weeks later. He'd had dinner with all 3 bankers and said they were among the nicest people he'd ever met. They brought their wives and children. Later, he cut deals with every one of them. The banks were taken care of over a period of time, the lawyers didn't get any richer, and today Wayne is doing fantastically well. You're probably wondering how this applies to your life if you are not headlining a major Las Vegas show. Here's how. Wayne took control of the situation. He appealed to the people in charge. Most of us need lawyers at some point in our lives, and we all have to deal with large bureaucracies. But sometimes you need to go right to the top, and you need to do it yourself. You don't have to sing Donkey Shane to make a sincere personal approach. Of course, there will be times when lawyers are essential. Some people are scoundrels. In those instances, sue the bastards. But whenever possible, settle. It saves a lot of time for everyone involved. Teach your children the value of $1. My kids know the value of money from example. They see how hard I work. I don't talk about it with them because I don't have to. They have eyes. They see the way I live. I turn off the lights whenever I leave the office. I'm always happy to get a good deal, whether I'm buying a building or buying supplies at Duane Reade. Trust me, you can get a good deal on shaving cream there. I always remember the example my parents set for me. I could see their determination and discipline. They didn't have to harp on it. I try to be the way they were. My parents were frugal in the sense that they knew it wasn't easy to make money and that it should be treated with respect. They lived well, but simply, and were not flamboyant in their spending. We rarely went out to eat. We took relatively few elaborate vacations. They emphasized schooling and education. We had a solid family life, and I remember feeling very fortunate. Each of us was expected to contribute something not only to the family as a whole, but to society. That is a Trump family value that is ingrained in me, and one I've tried to live up to. My children have benefited from affluence as I did, but it's surprising how unspoiled they are in many ways. They have budgets and live within them. They have limits on their credit cards, and they have them more for protection in an emergency than for anything else. When they were growing up, both of my sons earned extra money during their summer vacations by mowing lawns, cutting trees, moving stones, and doing landscaping work at the Seven Springs Estate in Westchester. Ivanka attended the School of American Ballet, which requires an enormous amount of discipline and training. College kids today are more money-savvy, perhaps, than kids from earlier generations. They seem serious about their money. This is a good sign, because the sooner you understand the value of money, the more likely you are to possess large amounts of it. If your children see you being careless with money, they will assume it's okay for them to be careless. Children watch. That's how they learn. Your priorities will often become their priorities. Any family can have a wild card or two, but on the whole, it's been proven that children will learn from what they see. If you obviously enjoy going to Las Vegas to gamble, it's likely they'll think this is a good thing and will follow suit. If you like going to Carnegie Hall and bring the kids along, they'll think this is an exciting event because you do. Children inherently like to please, so think about the values you exhibit. Sooner or later, kids will form their own tastes, but the initial exposure is important. I spent a good deal of my time with my children, Don Jr., Ivanka, and Eric, when they were growing up because we all lived together. We remained very close. I spend less time with Tiffany as she lives in California with her mother. I do try to include them in my travels and activities as much as possible. They know they are always welcome to join the family business. Don Jr. began working full-time at the Trump Organization in September 2001. Trumps are builders, he told Barbara Walters in a recent interview. I hope Ivanka, Eric, and Tiffany might also consider a career with us, but it's their decision entirely. I have very high standards, but so do my kids. They're all high achievers who enjoy working and are not goof-offs in any sense of the word. I wonder why I'm so lucky. Not teaching your kids about money is like not caring whether they eat. If they enter the world without financial knowledge, they will have a much harder go at it. Make sure you let them in on your way of thinking about money, how you manage expenses, how you save, where you invest. Let them know that having money isn't necessarily a sign of greed. It's an important element for survival. Just getting a first apartment can be a lesson for your kids. They suddenly learn about security deposits. Equip them for life as best you can. Buy them a subscription to Money or some other personal finance magazine. Give them incentives for saving their allowance. If they don't learn about money from you, who's going to teach them?